I would like to know. This is from the Culture Cornette Facebook group by Ben Morrow. I would like to know. I would love to know. Excuse me. What the boys that Jim was on the road with back in the day like to eat. Well, this is worded in such a weird way.
That is certainly some tortured and strangled and mangled syntax, but
What was Dennis and Bobby's favorite road snack?
well, here's what we would do normally is we would leave during noontime or during the early afternoon to go to the town, and we would stop at a fast food place that we would, depending on where we were going, we might have one that was on the way, or we might just stop at what we encountered. But I've always been a Wendy's guy, but also back in those days, Hardee's was not bad. And we used to do a little Hardee's. McDonald's was a thing, KFC, especially when they had nuggets. Nuggets, easy to eat in the car. So it would depend. It would be a mutual agreement of these things, but it was always fast food. You didn't have time to go in and sit down somewhere. Every once in a while, like I mentioned the other day, when we'd go to New Orleans, there'd be a van full of us. We'd stop at a Sizzler for the steak and all-you-can-eat shrimp. That was a go-in type of thing, but it didn't take forever. There was a restaurant in between Oak City and Tulsa that if we were on middle of the card in Oak City and got out early enough, we could afford to take an hour to stop and sit down and eat, which was wonderful since it was not only cooked to order food, but also we were in the middle of a fucking 1,000-mile, 48-hour loop in a car. But most time it was fast food. And then when we'd get out of the show at night, that's where Bobby and Dennis were wanting to go for straight to the liquor store. A lot of times they didn't even eat. Stan didn't drink to the level that Bobby and Dennis did together at that time, especially in Mid-South Wrestling. So Stan would eat, but most time, as long as we went to the liquor store and got their beer and I'm driving anyway, then I could pick whatever the fuck food-wise that we were going to do afterwards. But again, it was a drive-through window. Because and if you could find one open, I've mentioned that sometimes we had gas station fucking sausage because there was nothing else available at midnight 40 years ago, in a lot of these places. And so it would just depend, but it would always be with an eye toward let's get the quickest food we possibly can and get the fuck out of here. And because we always late and always got to be somewhere. But I mean, we had fun there too. Like, going up to all these drive-thrus, especially in the Carolinas, people would know who the fuck we were when they saw us, and the reactions sometimes would be amusing. Or, I've told you the thing that Bobby did that one time. We're at Wendy's, and all the fucking kids working the Wendy's window, they recognize us. Can we have your autograph? And they hand out the pen and paper. So I sign it, hand Stan, he signs it, hand back seat to Bobby. He writes something, hands it back to me. As I'm handing it to them, I see that he's written, "Please help me, call police." And that was funnier when I saw it than when I just told it, I guess.
Imagine if people had cell phones.
Oh, well, then they would have been diving in the car with us to take pictures, though. That was the thing. It was, but yes, that was the food of choice, was anything that we could get as quickly as possible because we were in the middle of a 2 or 3 or 4 or 500 mile fucking drive.
I remember you telling a story about Dennis getting into an incident at like a 7-Eleven or a small store where.
Oh, yeah.
Fans, how many of those incidents or incidents like that happened in Mid-South where it could have happened, but you quickly were able to either get out of there or just calm the situation? How many, until you stopped going into public, I guess I should say, how many of these kind of incidents were happening?
Well, I mean, it didn't just happen to us. It happened to a variety of the boys. You'd hear one of the guys coming in telling a story. I had to punch a guy at the fucking gas station or whatever. And Dennis was alone because he had, I can't remember what the situation was, but he may have come from, if we had a day off, he drove his little 2-seater Corvette that he had to the matches and was going, but he was by himself, goes into 7-Eleven and is getting some beer. And some guy comes up, "Hey, what the fuck do you mean fucking doing that to the Rock and Roll Express on TV Saturday," or whatever the fuck? And Dennis tries to blow him off, and he hauls off and punches Dennis. And Dennis fucking backhanded him. He had all the guys got that gold jewelry, right? When they got to Mid-South, they're making, this is 40 years ago, $2,000 and $3,000 a week. Dog made $12,000 one week. So they've all got these. Dr. Death had so much gold on him. I don't know if he'd have been able to get through a goddamn metal detector.
Yeah, but that may have been from OU sponsors, to be fair.
No, I saw him buy. I saw him buy a couple of them. He would know it was coming out of his pocket too. Gold chains, gold bracelet of fucking inch thick, the goddamn gold coin rings, and so Dennis backhands the guy and it broke his gold fucking wrist, or gold wrist, broke his gold bracelet.
The man with the golden wrist, a new gimmick for Dennis Condrey.
And he knocked the guy over amidst a section of canned peas or whatever. And he grabs his bracelet up and he throws the fucking, because the guy behind the counter is calling the cops. So he throws him $100 bill, takes his fucking beer, takes his bracelet and gets the fuck out of there, hops car, drives off. But it would, sometimes you'd get away from it, and other times there's been guys getting little scuffles. Well, you see that all the time when people on Twitter come up with the old newspaper clipping from Eau Claire, Wisconsin, where, some guy tried to goddamn smart off to one of the boys and got the shit kicked out of him. There was an article from the Charlotte Observer that it was on Twitter here not long ago. Wahoo, apparently over near the South Park Mall, where a lot of the wrestlers used to go by there, live in that area. He'd been there, and I can't remember the particulars of how the confrontation started, but it was basically it was a police report in the paper. There were 3 guys in a fucking car that had a interaction with Wahoo McDaniel and were being smartasses to him, apparently, because he stuck one of their heads in one of those fucking bicycle racks and they couldn't get it out. And he punched in whatever. I mean, shit like that would happen because everybody, not everybody, but in a lot of cases, every territory had fans. They saw you out. They were going to have something to say. And either if it was the wrong day for you to say something to that person, or that person just felt they needed to take up for the business or themselves, they would kick the shit out of that fucking person. And then you'd have a goddamn incident, and then guy get a lawsuit and he'd have to leave the fucking territory or whatever.